If you've listened to me talk much, you know that I don't really like it's a secret and we're going to use a bunch of selling gimmicks and we're going to use all that stuff. My view is, hey, my offer should be good enough. My content should be good enough that I don't have to use gimmicks. The funny thing is, even people who have kind of accept that. And what I mean is, let me use an analogy with webinars. 2 years ago, if you went to a webinar in the entrepreneurial space, they didn't tell you until the pitch that there was a pitch. They pretended they were just teaching you. And then it was like, haha, I've got a pitch, And so like that was, and people have quit doing that. People have figured out that's just dumb, especially if you're talking to people who are going to figure it out. You're transparent. You tell them that a pitch is coming. You don't try to, trick them to be there for the pitch. And yet that's what people do with these events. People don't tell people that there's a pitch. People won't give them a schedule that actually tells them when things are happening because they want to make sure you're there for the pitch. And of course, if they saw that it was a pitch, maybe you're going to check out. And so we were like, well, that's just dumb. Welcome to the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast, where being a badass has less to do with what you wear and what music you listen to, and everything to do with whether you've got the thriving online business of your dreams. I'm your renegade thinking Harvard Law grad turned online entrepreneur host, Bobby Klink. In my years building my thriving business, the most important lesson I've learned is that being a badass online marketer isn't about secret strategies or ninja tactics. It's about doing the basic stuff right and showing the F up. So each week here on the show, you'll get clear, easy to execute guidance on how to build your online business and a swift kick in the ass or two to make sure you're getting it done. Hey there, welcome to episode 190 of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klink, and I'm excited for today's show. I'm excited for a lot of reasons. Number one, it's the first episode of 2021. That's kind of cool. But we're also going to be doing one of my favorite kinds of episodes. We're going to do one of my kind of recaps, not of a launch, but this one is going to be a recap of Bomb Live, the virtual event that my team and I put on at the beginning of December. I've hinted at it. I mentioned, I think last week, something about the results, but I've mentioned we had some pretty good results. So that's reason number two, I'm excited. But reason number three, why I'm excited is I'm not doing this episode alone. For those of you who are in my community, you hear me talk about Katie, my number two, my integrator, quite a bit. Normally I'm blaming her for something, but she is here for this episode. Say hi, Katie.
Hi, guys.
So Katie is, if you don't know, she is literally my number two. She's the one who helps me figure everything out, run everything, et cetera, in the business. And she was in many ways the kind of the person behind the event who put it all together. So I was like, I'm going to have her come on rather than me try to do this alone. So that's what we got in store for you. Before we dig in, before we talk about things, this episode is brought to you by Badass Online Marketing University, our new free training program that we, by the way, announced at Bomb Live, that we messed with people at Bomb Live about, made them think we were going to make them buy it. And we made them think that this thing they were going to have to pay. They didn't even know how much because we packed in all this value. If you don't know what it is, it's a training program that is our answer to the problem of death by 1,000 courses. So we don't think you should have to pay thousands of dollars to take a bunch of different courses to figure out if you even want to use those tactics, strategies, whatever it is. So we're creating Bomb U. Right now, there's a single course in there, which is Online Marketing Foundations, which teaches you basic, like kind of the marketing foundational principles that everyone needs to understand and how to, by the way, market the way we did at Bomb Live. So when you hear the results and you're saying, whoa, those are pretty good results, maybe you'll think, maybe what Bobby's talking about makes sense. So that's what's in there now, but we're going to be adding other courses, a legal foundations course, a messaging course, a copywriting course, a list building course, and then the list goes on and on. I could keep going, but I won't because that'd be boring. Head over to bobbyklink.com/BOMBU. That's BOMU. And you can sign up absolutely free. No catch, no hidden upsell, nothing like that. Just a free training program. Should I say anything else about BOMU before we dive in, Katie?
I just think it was the best prank ever at Bomb Live. It was incredible just being there. And I knew it was coming, but still was amazing.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about that, listeners, in the kind of once we get past the results and all that, because that was one of the most fun things we did at the event is pranking people, because that's what I do. Business should be fun is one of our mottos. So we did it. So with that, we're going to dive into the results and give you a debrief of the event. And I'm going to start. I don't know if Katie and I were discussing before we hit record whether we should start with the numbers or not. Katie was like, well, maybe we don't. We hold those for the end so that like people have to listen to the whole thing. I said, yeah, or we could tell them at the beginning. They're like, holy crap, I should listen to this episode because they're clearly doing something right. And since I've got the mic and I can just talk, and she has a mic too, I was like, I'm just going to do it at the beginning. So we're going to start with kind of the results. And I'm sad to say, we're very sad about one thing, which is, I said, I think I mentioned this in last week's episode, that this was a $300,000 event. And when the very last sale, we only had one person buy the offer after the event. So when we put that in, I kind of fibbed with you. It wasn't a $300,000 event. We made a total revenue of $299,808.50. So what is that? I would make Katie math, but she doesn't like that. We are $191.50 short of a $300,000 event, but we'll go ahead and call it a $300,000 event. But I'll give you details now. The event tickets, people got access to the event in one of, I guess, three ways. There were bonus ticket holders who had bought any one of our affiliate promotions that we did in 2020. They got a ticket. Then the people who bought a couple of different products that we did promotions in August of 2020, they would get a ticket for free. Then we had live only tickets and VIP tickets. The big difference, VIP ticket holders got all the recordings. And then also there were a couple of extra laser coaching and kind of a Q&A for VIP ticket holders. So that was it. We had a total of 210 ticket holders, about half and half between bonuses and people who bought. And the people who bought, the pricing range from $97 to $497 based on whether they were a VIP or not and when they bought. We had early bird pricing that ended. When did it end? Like the end of August, or sorry, the end of October. Katie, is that?
Yeah, end of October. And just to clarify, like we had two tiers. One was live only, so they would come during the event and they wouldn't get recordings. And then we had VIP access, which did give them the lifetime access to the recordings, but also some extra bonus sessions during the event.
Yeah. So we had 210 total ticket holders, but the total ticket sales were just over $24,000 because, like I said, about half those tickets were bonus ticket holders. The funny thing, some of those people, I believe, literally never even knew about the event. We sent them multiple emails, but the reason why is they had gotten it as a bonus somewhere and then were like just no longer paying attention to me. I don't know why people would do that because I'm pretty fun to pay attention to, but some people did. So we had that. Our total cost, actually, I'm looking at our debrief sheet and it's actually wrong. I forgot we added another cost later, but our costs were right around $24,000 too. And I think we like made $100 or thereabouts from ticket sales, covered all the costs for the event. And now this is one of the beauties of a virtual event. A virtual event is much cheaper because I didn't have to have a venue. Didn't have to do a lot of the things. Didn't have to do catering. Like, if you're at these big events, if you think about it, if I had a 200 person event, even if it was literally just like I was doing coffee and tea and water service for people outside, that's going to be a big cost. So all of that stuff would have added up. So it would have been a bigger cost, but it was virtual. So we didn't. Plus, Katie and Bobby Joe, who's our community manager and head of fulfillment on my team, they were planning to come to DC for the event. I nixed that because this event took place literally 1 week after Thanksgiving. So the week after Thanksgiving is when it happened. And based upon all of the advice from public health experts that you should not travel and all that, I said, nope, you're not traveling. That also brought our costs down because we were going to hire an AV team. We were going to be doing it in like my virtual office with an AV team, et cetera. And we said, nope, Bobby's doing it from his basement using his camera. And we figured it all out. We did it. So that kept costs down. The vast majority of our costs were for swag boxes. If you don't know a swag box, it's Here's a box of like the kind of stuff you'd get at an event that they would hand out to you, but you ship it out. It's stuff that helps people. Hopefully it should be stuff that helps them get things from the experience. And we'll talk about that in a bit, like the choices we made, because Katie was really responsible for that. And so we'll talk about that. But that was like, I think $17,000 of the cost, or $18,000. It was around there. So it was the vast majority. The only other big expenses were the platform we used was like $1,700. And then Facebook ads, we spent about $1,100 or $1,200. That was only to warm audiences, only to existing. This was never about getting new people. It was about serving our existing community. So those were the expenses. Now let's talk about attendance. We had 148 people who attended any part of the event. I excluded our VA, who I know attended. I don't know if that counts some of like our other team members. It definitely counts like our come on, Bobby, what's the word? Our other speakers, for example, who they aren't in that 210 ticket. So, but we're at 148 was the total who attended at any given moment.
Which is about, that's about 100. Oh, well, I mean, if you're looking at it, it's probably not exactly 100% of ticket buyers and 50% of bonus ticket holders, but it's kind of like around that if you look at it.
Yeah, that's about probably how it worked out. And like I said, there were some bonus ticket buyers who literally, we could see they had literally unsubscribed from a list. Like they were just not even paying attention to anything. So, it is what it is. But yeah, we had 148. So again, it was about, when you do the math, it's about somewhere between 70 and 75% show up rate at any point. Now, the difficulty is there's a difference between a virtual event and an in-person event. Because if you do a three-day in-person event, if they show up for any of it, they're probably there for the whole time, unless they're local. But most people, hey, if you travel, you're going to show up for the whole time. With virtual events, that's not the way it worked. So like I said, we had 148 people who attended any part of the event. But when you actually look at individual sessions, on average, we had about 100 people per session. And I don't remember what the numbers were, but it trickles down over time. Obviously, we had less people on Sunday than we had on Friday, which is what it is. When we made the pitch at that session, which was in kind of a little past midway into day 2, there were 102 people who attended that session. But unbeknownst to me, Katie knew about this. What happened during the pitch to a lot of people, Katie? Do you remember this?
You got kicked out? Didn't you get kicked out? Or
no, my mic, I had a couple of times.
Oh, yes, your mic.
A couple of times during the event. Once when I was pranking them, and then once when I'm going into the pitch, where my mic all of a sudden went out. Like literally, I was wearing a lapel mic, didn't get unplugged, but for some reason it muted me. And like, we have no idea. It happened twice. And then what I had to do, luckily, again, I had my boom mic. I brought it back over. I had to reset some things. But some people, because, I'm not hearing it. And we were on about a 20-second delay or thereabouts is what would happen. So what happened was like Katie or someone on my team tells me, hey, no sound on like Voxer. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me figure this out. Well, then a lot of people thought, oh, I just need to refresh they thought they needed to refresh. Mm-hmm. And Katie told me after the fact, maybe it wasn't half of them, but a good chunk of people, when they went to refresh, they got kicked out of the session and couldn't get back in. So we're going to say we had 100 people there for the pitch, although we didn't really have 100 people there for the pitch. And then we ended up with a total of 38 people buying a coaching program. And the price point for the coaching program was $6,997. So it's a year-long program with kind of hot seats in a group, twice a month, and some other cool stuff that we threw in. But this was our, hey, we're gonna kind of launch this thing. And so 38 purchases, when you do the maths on 148, so the total attendees, it's 25% of the people who showed up at all bought. But when you really look at the people who were there, it's about a 40% conversion rate, just under, which I would take a 40% conversion rate for a $500 product at a live webinar. Heck, most people would take a 10% conversion rate on that. So we did something right, Katie. What do you think we did right?
Oh, I mean, I think there's so many things that we did right. I will say this though, but when we were thinking like in our wildest dreams, what conversion rate could we get for this event? The highest conversion rate we thought it was 10%.
Yeah. So when we were planning this event way back in the summer, when we first had the idea, we went to an event on how to do virtual. Well, we went to a virtual event on how to put on virtual events. And so we were working through numbers, and we had a crazy, Bobby goal of 500 people. And you're right. The highest we put was a 10% conversion rate. So we said 50 people would join coaching with a 500 person event. Well, we had an event that was basically 40% of that size, but we still got 80% of the sales. I'm just going to help you with the math. That's pretty impressive. And so we were pretty happy about that. But even during the event, just so you guys know, on day 2, at the end of day 2, which is when we made the pitch, it was a 3-day event. So we made the pitch on day 2. At the end, we did a debrief, like at the end of the day, which was, as I recall, it was like 11 o'clock my time, so it's just the team talking. And we basically said, okay, what's everybody's number now? What do we think? How many people do we think will join? And we had, numbers ranging from 20 to 30. And we all kind of looked at Katie, who said 30. We said, okay, we like the way you're thinking, but okay. Like we just had no sense because we had 11 sales that day on day 2. And so we were looking at it. And again, I think I picked 25. I was the midpoint. Somebody picked 20. I picked 25. Then Katie picked 30. And I don't remember where. I think Shelly was in the middle with me.
I'll say when I said 30, I was being so ambitious because I was actually feeling somewhat discouraged that day looking at the sales. I was super stoked that we got to 11 sales, but I just knew what we had was amazing. And I wanted it to get into more people's hands. And, but I said, I'm just going to believe big here. And so I said 30 and the way everyone looked at me like, really 30? Like I'm sticking with it.
And so that's where we were on the end of day 1. And what I should say is I mentioned when I was talking about Bomb U that we played a prank on people. So Bomb U, we literally in the session before the pitch. So the session before the pitch was the last session before lunch on day 2. So before that, I had been telling him we had a big announcement. We had this big thing coming. We were announcing a big project we had under works and whatever. I played with him, showed like a redacted thing and couldn't do it. And I was literally messing with him. And then, so somebody, one of the people who's been in my community for a while, Alicia, like in the Facebook group, I think at the end of day 1, like I kept messing with her and I said, I asked her to take a guess on what she thought. And I think she said, I think maybe it's a membership. I think you're going to have some kind of membership, a monthly membership, a low cost, blah, blah. So this was kind of what people thought. Well, then on day 2, I do this thing where I literally, I let them in on what we're doing, Bomb U. And I go through the thing and I explain all these courses. And I listed not just like the 4 or 5 we talked about today, but I also said, because we're going to do, course creation foundations, sales page foundations, beta launch foundations, storytelling foundations, content marketing foundations, email marketing foundations, I think I already said storytelling, but I just went down this thing and literally I was doing it like you would do a pitch. Each bullet comes in, I talk about it, blah, 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 blah. And then I talked about it and I said, Bomb U is part of a bigger movement and more on that later. And literally that's how I closed.
And everyone freaked out.
Right. Because everybody was saying, tell us where to buy, tell us where to buy, tell us where to buy. So everybody thought this was the pitch. And then I kept messing with them about it on day 3 even. And we didn't announce that Bomb U is free until the final session, the closing session on day 3. And if you want to hear my thinking about all this, go back to the episode. Then it would be episode number 186 from December, the future of online information business, where I talk about kind of what I see coming, which kind of explains part of what the thinking was, but also it was just a radical giving. We just wanted to solve this problem. It was a cause we had and we wanted to do it. And here's what I want to tell you. When I made that announcement on the end of day 3, we saw a rush of 9 buyers come in like within a matter of 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of, and then we had some more people afterwards. We gave them till the end of that day and to do some purchases. But so we did all of that. And like I said, it created the rush, but we had like, as of lunch on day 3, we had like 21 members or 21 people had bought. And normally at a live event, kind of lunch is where you generally is kind of lunch on day 3 is kind of normally when you're thinking you've pretty well wrapped up, because you do like a welcome lunch and what to expect and all that. We did all that, but then we almost doubled our sales after that. So we had a lot of people who were excited by the end. And one of the most interesting aspects, for the first time ever, I have a paid coaching group, which includes men, not just women, Katie, which is kind of strange, right?
That's amazing. No, I think it's fantastic.
I mean, and I say that, I think there's 3, maybe 4. I mean, you know,
for men. Yes.
it's still almost all women. But anyway, so those are the numbers and the results. But I want to talk through, I mean, I asked Katie the question, and what I'll tell you, I will give my answer. My answer to why we had the results we did is because we were living the marketing approach I teach in BOMU and all those things, which isn't about high pressure, high pitch. It's about build connection, do this. Like literally as I was making the pitch. So like to give you some background, as I was doing the pitch, before that, we had talked about like messaging and the different phases of messaging that you need when you're going to sell stuff and creating a product ladder and all of those things. And so I don't remember, I think I identified 5 stages of messaging. And so when I'm going into the pitch, I think my first slide said, now, if I were going to pitch something to you right now, ... And then I said, and then I had a slide that was basically saying, what part of messaging was me being on the main stage and all of those things. And I literally had them identify at a very meta level how I had been employing all of these things I had been teaching them the entire time. And then when we got to kind of that point, I said, now, what would come next? And literally all of them identified create the gap, which is kind of a piece of messaging where you show people the gap between where they are and where they want to be and what they need help with. And so then I literally went through that. And then I went into the offer. And when I actually went into the offer itself, I said, and remember, we talked about these 4 components of an offer: product, price, bonuses, guarantee. And so then I literally walked through each one of those at a very meta level, which people loved that I was being meta about it. And I basically said, look, I'm teaching you a lesson, even if you don't buy. So watch what I do. And so I think that was part of it. But also it vindicated our approach to marketing, which I'll just be honest with you. Let me be very clear. When you teach marketers how to market, this is always one of your fears. And I deal with it too. You can call it imposter syndrome. You can call it whatever you want, but you're like, what if no one buys? What does that say about my method? Or like, let's say, you know, if you taught people how to launch with challenges and you did a challenge and it didn't really work. Well, you know, what does that say? So I know a lot of people, we deal with this. And so that's, you know, kind of what you're thinking. So there was a bit of that happening. But true to form, I was proven right, which again, Katie doesn't like me being proven right all the time, but I tend to be proven right.
I'll accept it here.
Yeah, in this case, you'll accept it. I'm glad you accept this one. But the funny thing is, it was so successful that we had to change our plans. Katie, you want to talk about what you were so worried about me not doing before the event that now you're like, well, I'm glad you didn't really do that. You want to talk about that, or should I?
Yes, I'll tell my version of that story. So I'm a planner. Of the 2 of us, I am the ultimate planner. And Bobby's always telling me, procrastinate on purpose. You got to read that book. By the way, if you don't have that book, you should read that book. But I was wanting to plan out post-event. And one of our thoughts for post-event is, well, if we don't meet our goal during the event, we will have a webinar and do that webinar to people who didn't attend the event to get them up to speed on what we were doing and the coaching, and then make the pitch for coaching. So I'm like, well, and this is like weeks before the event, I'm like, we need to plan this webinar and we need to make sure that we have it all planned. So after the event, when you're already exhausted, you have the slides, and then we can just go into opening registration and do all that stuff and make it seamless because I'm the planner. And Bobby was like, no, I'm not showing up with that negative energy. We are going to have an amazing event. We're going to meet our goal. And that's the energy I'm showing up with. I'm like, okay, I get that, but I need a plan. I need a plan for the plan, Bobby. And he knew that that's how I ran things. And so we didn't have a plan for it to not work out because he would not allow me, which was amazing advice. And I will say I was nervous at first, but I'm glad that you were right.
So, and to be clear, we performed so well that not only did I not do a webinar, Katie would not even let me send an email to my list inviting them to join. So basically the only people who were invited to join coaching were people who were up online. Or, we had one person who watched the replays. She's a doctor who was working during the event, because obviously doctors are working these days and had hospital shifts. So, but literally no one else heard the offer. And I was like, that's fine. And so there's a lesson in here. She mentions procrastinate on purpose, but there's a broader thing, which is I don't worry about things not working out until I get to that point. And again, what I told her is I was like, look, if we get there, because again, let me be clear. I was looking at a webinar. I was like, the only way I'm doing a webinar is if it tanks at the event. And we are so far under. I was like, otherwise we'll probably just do some emails. But so I'm like, I'm just not going to plan that out while, in advance of the event. I was like, if I have to, I'll do it. I'll find the time. I'll find all that. But we didn't need it. So I'm very glad we didn't. But let's talk about the planning process. Mm-hmm. Do you remember when the idea for this of doing an event first came up?
I think that was back in late spring around Massive Action May, because it was a bonus for one of our affiliate promotions at that time. Yeah. So I think it was kind of brewing around then.
Yeah, it was back in May is when we decided that we were going to do an event.
And we knew we wanted to get you on stages in 2020, and then COVID happened. But then it was like, well, we need Bobby on a stage. And
yeah. And so we were going to do an event, and then so we're going to do an event. And then one of the members of my community, Ellen, shout out to you, Ellen Johnson, she mentioned to me, she's like, oh, well, if you're going to do a virtual event, you should attend this virtual event with me. So literally there was the virtual event on virtual events put on by Sage Event Management. If you don't know Sage, it's Barry and Blue. They're the people who put on a lot of the entrepreneurial events that we know of. Stu McLaren's event Tribe Live. When Amy Porterfield did her EE Live in 2019, they put it on. I don't know about 2018. I think 2019 they did. I think they do the ClickFunnels stuff. They do a lot of these big 3-day events. So I knew of them. And so they were, doing this thing on virtual event. So we went to that, and it was an experience. I mean, it was partly an experience because it was meta for us. We were experiencing a virtual event, and there were things we liked about it. There were things we didn't like about it, including, what they were doing and what most people were doing was like a Zoomzilla. People would do a bunch of different Zoom rooms. And so Katie and I were not in the same Zoom. Those were meetings. Yeah. We were not in the same meeting. So we couldn't chat with each other. We of course were chatting on our software, our internal stuff, but we couldn't chat with each other during the event. And there wasn't a really easy way to network outside of, they would put you in random breakout rooms, but that was about it. So there were things we didn't like, but one of the things that they said, and one of the exercises they had us do is think about what you love most about live events and figure out a way to virtualize it. Mm-hmm. And that was a piece of advice that really kind of drove our decision-making in almost every way after that. Because one of the things, I'm a people person. To me, the networking, the meeting, the connecting, going deeper, and even people you've met, getting a chance to really kind of go deeper and build a relationship. Those are some of the things I love the most about events. And so our goal from the beginning was, how do we do that? And
and I think also what was great, and this was after that, we started really listening to our people who were attending other virtual events. And we because of the feedback we were hearing from our people, we had already known what we really wanted to kind of virtualize, those experiences we want to bring in, but we then started realizing the experiences we wanted to leave out of our virtual event that other people were experiencing in a negative way. And that really helped us to craft an experience that was very much a serve first experience at Bomb Live.
Yeah, well, and I should mention, when we got done with the virtual event on virtual events, we had a Google Doc, which had a lot of stuff, but there was this classic moment in the visionary integrator, Bobby, Katie relationship. We had this thing from our chat where basically I was like, cool, we're gonna do an event. I'll create some awesome content. We'll sell something. This is my thing. And Katie's like, Katie has this whole list of things that we have to worry about, like all the way down to wardrobe, hair, makeup. Like she just has like the 1,000 things we have to plan. I'm like, I'm going to talk. We're going to sell some stuff. It's going to be awesome. But so again, that was how it started. But yeah, I do want to key in on that, what we didn't like and what we heard from our audience, because events, they're this interesting place. If you've listened to me talk much, you know that I don't really like it's a secret and we're going to use a bunch of selling gimmicks and we're going to use all that stuff. My view is, hey, my offer should be good enough. My content should be good enough that I don't have to use gimmicks. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is, even people who have kind of accept that. And what I mean is, let me use an analogy with webinars. 2 years ago, if you went to a webinar in the entrepreneurial space, they didn't tell you until the pitch that there was a pitch. They pretended they were just teaching you. And then it was like, haha, I've got a pitch, And so like that was, and people have quit doing that. People have figured out that's just dumb, especially if you're talking to people who are going to figure it out. You're transparent. You tell them that a pitch is coming. You don't try to, trick them to be there for the pitch. And yet that's what people do with these events. People don't tell people that there's a pitch. People won't give them a schedule that actually tells them when things are happening because they want to make sure you're there for the pitch. And of course, if they saw that it was a pitch, maybe you're going to check out. And so we were like, well, that's just dumb. And again, Katie, I want to be clear. I want to see if she's willing to tell you this. Do you remember when I came to you and I said, what if for the event, we were 100% transparent and we didn't try to pretend this stuff? We told them, we treated them as adults. Do you remember what your reaction was?
I don't, but I think part of me was probably a little apprehensive because it hadn't been done and I wasn't sure how it would go down.
Right. And your answer was something like, well, but I mean, there's got to be a reason that people do this. and it's funny because it's almost like, we're like, well, they're doing it and they're the experts, so they must know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And again, me in typical me fashion, I don't think that's the case. I think it's just is what it is. Which, side note, I had this interesting discussion come up with prices ending in 7, which I've now gone to the depths of the internet, and I cannot find any real study that shows that ending in 7 versus ending in 9 is better. That they're like $9.97 versus $9.99. I found nothing. And so I explained to people, the only reason I keep my prices ending at 7 is because I market to other marketers who might be like, wait, why does your price not end with 7? So I'm like, I just don't want them to have to think about it. But normally I would be like, that's dumb. I'm not going to do that anymore. But so that was kind of what happened with the event. And so we made this decision early on. We were going to give people a schedule. And again, this was something that people, my audience also told me that, look, just didn't even occur to me. Because look, yes, I'm a father, but I'm not the primary caregiver to my daughter. My wife tends to be the primary caregiver. And so I can kind of like put myself into a hole somewhere and not be disturbed. But I know a lot of people saying that's just not realistic. If I'm at home, my kid is going to come and is going to expect my attention. So I need to know what the schedule is going to be. And so we're like, okay. And so we did that. And then on top of that, we made the decision we were going to stick to the schedule. And I think we never got more than like 5 to 10 minutes off schedule. We kept to it. We honored it. And we were able to do that. And also another thing that people said was that a lot of people were trying to literally just take a live event and make it virtual, which meant like these 10, 12-hour days, which they just said, that's just too much. Mm-hmm. And we kind of agreed. So we had, not counting the VIP stuff, we had 5 hours of actual content per day. And then there were breaks and lunch and all that, but 5 hours of actual content during each day. Sunday was less. So the third day was less. But also, here was the other thing that feedback we got from people was that a lot of the events they'd been to, and again, I'm going to try to put this nicely, but I can't really because they didn't put it nicely. But basically, they said stripped of the energy and the music and all of kind of the motivational stuff that happens when you're in person, a lot of events kind of were kind of exposed to be just fluff.
And sales, it's just a huge sales event.
It's just a sales event.
Yeah.
Yeah. And literally we had people talking about how, like, you know, on day one, like all the guest speakers came to this, not our event, but someone else's event. And like literally the guest speakers didn't provide any value. It was literally a sales pitch for their product was what it was. And again, it was like why you needed it. So it was kind of whatever, but we heard that loud and clear from people. And we didn't want to do it. And again, here was another one of these things where it was like, I was like, oh, well, I should do this. We were originally going to bring in a charity to make a pitch. And just so you know, this is what is often done on day one of a 3-day event. You bring in one of these charities who they raise money at these live events, which again, I'm all for. I've given to these charities. I've given thousands to these charities myself personally. But let me tell you, the reason why they do it is because once you've opened your wallet, even to give $10 to that charity, you're much more likely to buy their product. And so I thought about that and I said, and you know, I'm going to probably try to find ways to give to charities and encourage my people, but it's not going to be part of a sales event because I don't want to be using it as a gimmick to get people to buy.
I think something I really wanted to kind of talk about, you know, you asked me what worked, what made it work. And I think we always came to the planning table with the intention of this being a very different event, of this being a serve first kind of event. But I think as it evolved and we started learning about how other people were experiencing these types of events and how it's always been done, we realized you're really great at asking why. I'm a rule follower. I've always been a rule follower, but when it comes to rules, you always ask why. And you're great at poking holes in the reasons behind these strategies that these people use. And you kept poking holes and realizing there was no substance. There was no good reason except for the entrepreneur serving themselves. Mm-hmm. And we did not want our people to show up at our event and feel like we were serving ourselves. We wanted to make sure they left, even if they didn't buy one thing from us, if they didn't even think about it, that they felt they left with value, they left served, they left seen. And I feel like we did that. But I think it was the fact that you were willing to say, why would they do it that way? Why does it have to be done that way? And I think that's what made it so special.
Yeah. And I think that's absolutely right. I mean, I kept asking those questions because, again, for the listeners, this really is at the heart of what I'm doing. And again, I'm going to tell you, if you don't want to see behind the looking glass or see the man behind the curtain or whatever analogy from pop culture we want to use, you really should stop listening to me. Mm-hmm. Because what I've determined is the more that I look, the more that I recognize what we're being taught. And I don't blame the people teaching us this because it's what they learned. And it's what those people learned. And it's what the people before them learned. So it's something that started probably like 20 years ago when the first internet marketers started making money, and it's just been passed down. But all this stuff is about us. Mm-hmm. It is a me focus. It is not a you focus. And I mean that in the broad sense, like you should be asking, how do I serve my audience? Not how do I serve me? And all of these things, when I look at people, the rationale people give is, well, more people will buy. And again, I don't want to say, look, I'm not someone who has a problem with people buying my products. My products are great. I'm all for them buying. But there's a subtle thing that the way that it's worded is not, I get to help more people. It's more people will buy. And again, maybe I'm weird in this, that words matter, but I believe that words show us a lot about what is happening there. When you hear that, to me, yes, then people will say, oh, and I know that, there's magic in the transaction, or what is it? The transformation is in the transaction, and then buying is what makes them do it. I believe those are psychological tricks we are using on ourselves to rationalize these decisions, which are about us, not our audience. And again, I'm not casting aspersions. We all do it. The more I see it, the more I'm like, oh my God, and I was even doing it, and things that I don't think about. But so, yeah, we are more and more moving away from that. But let me just use this example. Like at the event, I was clear to people in advance there was going to be a pitch. I was clear in the opening session there was going to be a pitch. And I said, look, my view is if my content is not good enough to keep you here, that's on me. That's not on you. And so we were looking at it from this perspective of how do we actually create an experience that people will want to be a part of. And some of the stuff started in advance. And again, I give Katie credit for this. Like I mentioned swag boxes. And a lot of what we heard about swag boxes were people like at these events were sending swag boxes, and a bunch of it was just like, it's not just that it was junk. It was useless junk. I mean, again, so we said, let's not do that. And I give all credit to Katie on this. She said, we've got to be very intentional about this. And we put together a box, and just so you know, everybody got this box, whether they were a bonus or whatever. Katie, you probably don't know this offhand, what the actual price was. The price for the box
it was around between 50 and $60
plus the $14 for the book. So I think it was $70 with the book.
And then the shipping.
So basically we probably paid somewhere around $85 to $90 per box, even for people who only paid us $97 for the ticket, and for people who got it as a bonus. And we did that very intentionally. And Katie, do you want to talk about why we did that and what our thinking was?
For the swag boxes?
Yeah, on why we were willing to invest that much in a swag box.
Because in my mind, and I know like the team was totally on board with it, it said something to the people attending the event. It said, I mean, when you receive a gift, especially when you don't really expect it, and we told them there's something coming, but we didn't say what they were getting or anything like that. I wanted to make sure that they felt something when they received their swag box. And I wanted them to feel excited about the event. I wanted them to feel blown away. I wanted them to feel most of all valued. The fact that they are committing their time to be there, and they were very much a part of our culture, because every piece of swag that we put in there had a meaning to it. There was a purpose or a meaning to everything that was in there. And our responses when people got the boxes were far beyond what even I was expecting. I was hoping for, but I didn't expect people to react the way they did. And it made me so happy that we put the intention to detail that we did into those boxes. Because people, the second they received the box, I mean, there was more that we did, and we can talk about that with the No Excuses November and all of that, to craft an experience before they even logged into the event. But when they got the swag boxes, it was a level of connection that I think they felt that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Well, and so, I mean, some of this, so some of it was fun. Like we had, we created a card deck of Bobby Swift kicking the ass. So it's like sayings and things like that. So like literally cards that you can pull one day if you wanted to. But again, they all had meaning. So they were fun, but it was also like, kind of thoughts, the way we think about things. And then I gave a cowbell, since I don't want more cowbell, and we did that. But then we gave like very useful things. We had a workbook in there, which, everybody thought was amazingly done. But I mentioned the book, and this is something like nobody does. I won't say no, but basically nobody does. We pay to give everyone a copy of The Go-Giver, which is what I call my business Bible. I say it's one of the most important books and I was already doing it beforehand, but it's a book that when other people read it, I know they start to have an aha moment. And so I wanted to give that to everybody. And people were raving about it. So we were very intentional about doing things like that most people don't. Like people will do like a bunch of branded stuff, which we did. Let's be clear. Most of our stuff that they got was branded, but then, I gave them that thing, which I'm like, this isn't even branded. This is useful. And I think you should have it. So we did that. And Katie mentioned No Excuses November, which was an interesting thing. We were planning on having a Facebook group in advance of the event. We didn't really know what it was going to be, but then I did a webinar. And I did a webinar. It was like, why most online entrepreneurs are stuck in the 1950s and how you should be marketing in 2020. And it was talking about how most people are in the sales driven approach, not a marketing approach, and how you need to be doing that. And one of the things I said was literally that the big shift that people need to make is, instead of like, selling, like creating what I want and selling it, I need to sense and react. It's one of the big first change you got to make. Sense what your audience wants and create something in response to that. And by the way, like having an idea of what you want to create and going and talking to 5 people to verify it is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about literally hearing from your audience, hearing what they're saying, hearing their feedback, and creating stuff in response. And during the webinar, like I was in Keynote, so I couldn't see the comments. But afterwards, like I get off and my team said, yeah, their biggest response was, why do we have to wait? And so I went and I looked at the comments and I read through them, and there was a lot of that. So we said, you know what? You don't. So we created an entire like group coaching experience called No Excuses November. So anyone, as soon as they bought their ticket, they got to participate. We had prompts of things for them to do, to prepare, Q&A
questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Q&As with me. So we were doing all of that to get people prepared so that they could start in advance. And again, an example of, what do they say they want? Oh, okay, I'm going to do it. So we did all that. And then the software we've got to talk about.
Yeah.
We made a very intentional decision not to do the Zoomzilla, which I don't want to say would have been free, but I've already got Zoom. And as it turned out, we would have only needed one Zoom room. So we could have done it basically for free without costing us anything. Or I say that maybe I would have had to up my plan. No, because it wasn't a webinar. But I think we could have done it for free. But we didn't. Instead, we chose software that was going to cost us $9 per person who attended, even for 1 minute, plus $1 for everyone that we did it. So that's why it ended up costing us $1,727. A lot more. Mm-hmm. And it's called Excel Events. And Katie, why don't you talk about why we decided to use that instead of the Zoomzilla?
Well, the best thing, we actually looked at quite a few different options. But what was really important to us is that all that big list that we made of virtualizing the things we love about events, none of them really quite hit the nail on the head. And we did not want them to feel like they were sitting through 3 days of webinars. We absolutely wanted to avoid that, because who wants to do that? And so when we discovered Excel Events, Bobby was doing all of his sleuthing, looking in there, and he figured out this was perfect. It was built for networking. And that's one of the things he loves most. And most people, when they go to these events, is networking, meeting new people. And that's what made this the obvious choice, was the networking features. And when we were actually in the live event, we didn't have any way of knowing, because we've never used a platform before, just how well the networking features would function. But the feedback we got from this, we call it speed networking, the speed dating feature, but it's speed networking, was so amazing and so much fun. People just they actually had an experience that you probably couldn't have it exactly like that in a live event. So it kind of created its own unique experience that a lot of these people have never had before.
Yeah. Well, and again, so one of my friends, Anna Nelson, she was one of the speakers of the event, she refers to it as the bathroom line conversations, which I find weird, because she talks about how she talks to people in the bathroom line. I talk about it as the hallway networking, where at a live event, you will randomly meet people and have a quick chat in the hallway. And that was one of the problems. I was like, well, how do you do that? Well, this literally, it was speed dating. We set it up, and one of the pieces of feedback, we should have given them a little more time, but we gave people, I think it was 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. So they would go in and they could go into this networking thing, and it would just randomly match them, and they could chat for 3 minutes, and then they'd get matched with someone else.
And it's a video. It was a video, like you're in a Zoom room with one person, you have 3 minutes to talk to each other. And then you have an option to click a button to exchange business information that you filled out before the event. And then it'll repair you up with another person, and you just have these, these rounds. It was super cool.
Yeah. And people love that. But we set up rooms and lounges, which, we had some tech issues with, but the thing is, like, people loved it, because this event, as a virtual event, we had many people say, was in many ways the closest thing I'd ever experienced to a live event, an in-person event in the virtual world. And we got feedback from people. We had many people say that this event was among the top 1 to 2 events they'd been to, including live events. Mm-hmm. And there's something to that. And we were intentional in our choices. We've committed ourselves as a company that we will spend more money on software if that's what we need to do to get the right customer experience. Because we believe in that. We believe in doing that. But it was even that, like, we didn't even think about it in advance, but one of the things about Excel events, they had the ability to have like exhibition booths, like you could have sponsors. We didn't have sponsors, but we use those booths for bonuses. Like, there was content because there was so much we wanted to share that we couldn't include it. So we included extra lessons that people could go during off hours, go watch me, in a recorded video, fill in some more information in their workbook, get more value out of the event. And so we did all of that. And again, I think the lesson here is, again, I draw a lot of lessons from this. Number one, being intentional about things. Number two, treat people like adults and it works out. And it's not just that it works out. It's sure, if you do all the gimmicks and you do all those things, you might make sales, but you don't create the kind of connection where people will constantly come back, will constantly send people your way, will become brand advocates. And that's what I want. Again, it's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I love doing it. I love serving people, but I also know that, people are going to talk about these things. People are going to tell their friends, and it's going to have these ripple effects. And the coolest thing was, after the event, I've had so many other people who've now reached out saying they were inspired by us announcing that Bomb U is free. So they're doing similar things. And we get emails about those things. We get, feedback about those things. And it's just such a rewarding thing to see them paying it forward because of what we did. Mm-hmm. So anything else you want to talk about, Katie?
No, something that came to mind when you were talking about Excel events. And I just want to say it out loud and get it out of my head, was that the energy you bring when you're serving your audience is contagious. And a good example of that is during our live event, because of the energy we brought, because we were living in our core values, radical giving being one. We actually had a member of our community, Patrick Sesko, perform live music in one of our lounges. And I popped in there, and the emotion that you could feel in the room, because people haven't been able to go to concerts, they haven't been able to be with their friends at a pub or anything like that. They got that at a virtual event. And it was our community coming together and serving one another, because we created this service-based, a serve-first experience. And that, to me, is one of the most amazing parts of the whole event, was seeing the people serving one another. And that's when you got something, is when your energy is that contagious.
Yeah. And again, I'll talk about that I think when tickets were still available for early access or whatever, I made a comment. I said, we asked people to post, like, to comment on a thread about what they were most excited about for the event. And one person said something, it wasn't this much. It was like, yeah, you're going to be great, Bobby, but I'm really more excited to meet all the other people. And I was like, that's a sign that you have the right community. Mm-hmm. And I think we fulfilled on that. And so, yeah, what I'll tell you is, we credit our success with us being willing to do this the right way, not treat it as a sales event, but treat it as a serve first event, and then let chips fall where they may. Mm-hmm. And like I said, consider we closed about 40% of people. Clearly we did something right. So we will be doing Bomb Live 2021. We're not sure if it's in person yet. We're not sure if it's virtual, but we will be doing it again, and we will be doing it bigger, and we will be doing it better. So that's all I got. Katie, got anything else, or can we let him go now?
That's perfect.
Okay. So listeners, that's it for this week's episode of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. I'll be back again next week, probably not with Katie. So, it'll be okay, but maybe I'll bring her on again to chat about other things, because she has important things to say. But until then, go out, build your business, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. That's it for this episode of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. Make sure to tune in next time. And in the meantime, go out and build the badass business of your dreams.